We have with us an amazing guest. We have with us Brian Miles, the mental performance coach of Cleveland Guardians. He comes in with 15 years of solid sports psychology experience, and he's here to enlighten everyone who's watching how sports psychology can benefit performers at the highest level. Hi, Brian.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Of course, thank you so much for coming. And my first question, of course, would be why baseball? What made you get into that?
Oh man, as the uh as the resident non-baseball guy in baseball, I do think it's kind of funny how I ended up in that sport, but it's a little bit of happenstance. I think it's a good lesson on how we continue to foster and build relationships in the field. But I was working in the military, and then somebody I'd sort of crossed paths with. She had taken a role here in Cleveland and was looking to build out her team. And so, luckily, we had crossed paths, and we had the opportunity to work with some similar people. And so, she reached out to see if I'd be interested. And you know, now I look at it 12 years later in professional baseball. It's kind of crazy, but um, it's such a cool experience to work in a sport where mental performance is really accepted, and it's become a fabric of what the athletes and coaches do. It's a really unique opportunity to work in a sport that
Mm-hmm.
lends itself pretty well to the mental game, considering just the time and the length of the season, and at times how slow the game can be, which allows time for your mind to either help or hinder you.
Yeah.
It's like the perfect recipe for for mental performance coaching and for implementation of mental performance into the performance.
Yeah. Thank you for that answer. I think that's a wonderful introduction of how athletes or other performers alike use or can benefit mental performance strategies to enhance their performance. You worked with tactical populations before and then transitioned into professional baseball. How have things maintained or even changed from your perspective when it comes to working with performers of different levels or domains?
Yeah, I do get asked that question quite a bit. I think I think the hard skills are relatively similar. It's more about how you adapt them to the environment that the individual is coming from, which is
Mm-hmm.
really anything. I mean, it's what we're taught in meeting an athlete where they are, and then finding a way to relate the concepts or skills or theories or whatever it might be that you're talking about to the individual. Um, I do think that environments or sports or theaters or whatever it might be sometimes will lend themselves to certain skills or theories depending on what that is. And in the military, um, talked a lot about energy management, quite a bit about attention control, just considering the demands that oftentimes are vying for a soldier's attention. I
Mm-hmm.
think in baseball, you have similar things, right? I mean, it's a slower game, so it can be very easy to have your attention pulled in multiple different directions. It's also an opportunity for our mind to be pulled into the past, into the future, and
Yeah.
so talk a lot about presence, talk a lot about being in the moment, a lot about being able to accept and let go. And so, again, it's oftentimes what works for the athlete, but I think over the course of time, there certainly are specific things that lend itself to the sport. Which is it's fun. I mean, that's if I remember our first conversation, that was me asking you. I'm like, oh my god, we're playing all this chess. Like, this is what we do in baseball. What do you do in chess? What do you teach in chess? Like, I play it, but like, talk to me about how you teach these skills to your athletes. And so it's so funny as we think about like the specificity of the game that we're talking about and how it can relate to the skills we talk about.
Yeah, I think, it's lovely how baseball and chess are similar in many ways than people might think. How you describe that it's a slower game. Chess, too, is played for a lot of hours at the highest professional level, even 5 to 6 hours, depending on the stage of the game and the opponent. And then also, because it's as quiet as it is, there's so much chance for the mind to wander in the past, the future, and also, like you said, working on staying connected to the present moment becomes incredibly important, especially in such cases.
Yeah, we don't benefit from the silence in baseball. And I remember the last time you and I talked, I was kind of flabbergasted at the idea of just like the true silence, like where it's like you can like hear your heartbeat, you can like
Yeah.
hear almost like your thoughts. Um, I almost think sometimes it's a benefit that it is so loud in professional baseball or in other sports because it kind of forces you to like almost ground yourself and where you are and like kind of grab your attention where you need to be. Whereas, yeah, I can only fathom like just the silence over time is probably really difficult to deal with.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think with time, though, they get accustomed to it, just like how each sports person gets used to the climate of performance and with time even get better at it. I think chess players find a way to manage that silence after a certain amount of time.
I can
Yeah.
absolutely imagine that. Yeah.
Yeah, but for the viewers, I think this is a great way to introduce how you and I started talking. Brian and the team, players on his team actually connect a lot over chess. So that would be a great place for you to share more. Like, how do you all work through chess?
Yeah. And again, let me give the shout out to you though. I was just scrolling through LinkedIn and we weren't connected at all, but you had just started your sports psychology consulting and I saw the little chess piece in the name of your company and I was like, "Oh my God, that's so funny how much we play chess." And I was like, I've never heard about mental performance consulting in that space. And so, I clicked on your name and then I sent you a message. I was just like,
Yeah,
hey, I'm like, this is super random, but I'm like, we play a ton of chess in the clubhouse. And so I was like, it's just like, hey, I think it's really cool. And that's how we ended up connecting. And I I never really expected that chess would be a thing that we would connect over with professional baseball players.
yeah.
I played a little bit of chess growing up with my dad, and it was always like a fun thing that we would do, a way to connect with my father. And then since I was probably like 12 or 13, I hadn't touched chess since. And I get to Cleveland and start working with the major league team, and we just have this group of guys that seemed really interested in it. And so we redid our clubhouse last year, and it was my first time having like a true office space. And
Mm-hmm.
so it was a lot bigger than I anticipated. And so I'm thinking to myself, like, what do I fill this space with? Right. So I have these two bookshelves and yeah, we bought like $1,000 worth of books and put them in there and had these like really nice couches and I have a Nespresso machine and like some nice lighting and all this stuff and I have a bunch of puzzles and a bunch of different things that guys can like use their mind for and
Mm-hmm.
bought some Nerf guns with some targets and then I was I got this big old coffee table and I was like what would look awesome here and it's just a really nice chessboard so I went and I bought a chessboard and I didn't do the high end one but I didn't do a low end one I bought a pretty nice one
Yeah.
and as the guys are just kind of walking by they see the chessboard in there and like I said a lot of them play and so it was really a deep dive for me too, getting back into it. And so we have some players that play quite a bit on chess.com and they always talk about the rankings and this and that. And I got my butt kicked pretty good for a while there. And then I started to kind of hold my own and it was a lot of it was about asking questions too of really trying to like learn the game by asking the guys that were better than me like hey like what were you thinking here or hey like what would be a move or a lot of them talked about like, hey, try to be consistent with your opening and like really learn it. And I always realized like in the middle of our chess games, we were not talking about chess. We were
Mm.
talking about maybe components of chess, and we were talking about like being able to let go of that move that you just made, or like, oh my god, like what a bonehead move! Like they just, I just got my queen taken, and I'm like so frustrated, and all of a sudden that turns into just like a man, the error I made in the game, and like similar types of emotions and how we're feeling about it. And then it became this thing where then like players were playing chess in my office just while I'm doing work, or I'm like I got
Yeah.
music on and we're just kind of hanging out and we're watching. And then it became a thing where lots of people were in there watching each other play chess, and some guys were talking trash, and they're like, ooh, like you kind of feel the energy in there of people watching. And for some guys, it was great. Like, our Sunday mornings, we're having coffee and we have a day game and got some soccer on in the background. And he's like, it was always a thing where it's like, let's play a game. And
Yeah.
it became this really cool experience where we were building connection, we were building relationships. There was very like a sense of safety in that room. Um, but we were also competing. We were learning from each other. And yeah, it it was like a microcosm of a 3 hour baseball game from the mental side on this board. And we have a clock in there, so we're usually playing 10-minute games.
Yeah.
Can't take all of our day in the office playing chess, but it's funny because for when guys get there early and we're just like playing and it was a slower game, it was very more casual and stuff. The second the clock comes on, it's just like
Hmm.
you're like the way your brain is working and moving, it's like almost to how the game speeds up on you in baseball. It just the parallels and the correlations to chess and baseball were just so real, and it was such a cool game to both bring connection and relationships together, and just myself with our players, but also the parallels to the sport that these guys played. It was such a special thing. And so, like I said, I'm so happy that the LinkedIn algorithm worked in my favor. My computer must have been hearing a lot of us talking about chess because
Yeah.
boom, there you are. And again, like I was so excited to be able to connect with you and then learn about your experience. And I remember I was towards the end of the season, I even told some of the boys, I'm like, dude, I'm like talking to this like really great chess player, and she's got like a mental performance thing, like we'll talk about it. And so it was really cool. And I think I told you too, like it wasn't just about us playing chess. We actually have a chess club at the Guardians, and
Yeah.
so our players, along with myself and a couple of our other coaches, we play against chess teams, high school chess teams,
Hmm. Hmm.
in the Cleveland area. And yeah, there's nothing like getting your butt kicked by some 13-year-old or 14-year-old talking trash to you, to a grown man. He's like, he's like starting the game off and he's like, I'm going to try something new here. And it's like 5 moves later and you're in checkmate. And you're like, oh, yeah, good for you, man. So it was pretty cool to bring it together within the community as well, and see how, our players responded just to spending time with these kids and growing relationships. It was pretty sweet.
Yeah. First of all, I will never forget the day when you texted me. So, I was honored that, hey, someone of, the stature of the work that you do, coming from the experience that you do, took notice of something I've just started. You were one of the first people that motivated me. Okay, like, okay, I might be doing something right and moving in the right direction. So, always grateful to you for that. Thank you, Brian. And adding upon that, it's lovely to see how chess has become a vehicle for bonding for a different sport, but almost also, you know, opening up conversations about your sport, but through another sport. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
mental performance consultants working with athletes, that a rapport that you have with the person you're working with is so crucial for that translation to happen effectively. Do you think, using games or sports such as chess, where they're like more close contact, or, well, not close contact as in the physical aspect, but more so really sitting close to them, does that help in building relationships with the performers you're working with?
And I think so. I think there's an underlying layer of competition to it, right? Just
Yeah.
like the highest performers, doesn't matter who they are competing in everything they
Right.
do all the
Yeah.
time. And so it's fascinating to find something, I think, too, that's like it is very cognitive, right? And so it's
Yeah.
like it's not taking a physical toll on them, which is yeah, I think for a lot of guys that play sports that are very physical or demanding physically, um, finding something that is slower and more cognitive, I think, is a great way to build connection and relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Um and it's funny, it doesn't have to be even a game where you're involved. I One of my very first years working for the Guardians, I at that time I was working in the minor leagues. I was doing a ton of traveling to all the different affiliates, and it's funny where I lived. I lived in like kind of like this like outdoor shopping plaza, like above the shops. They had an art festival
Mm-hmm.
where I was living, and so my wife and I were just walking around, and I found this woman who made like homemade puzzles,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like a tanagram puzzle with like 8 pieces or 9 pieces, maybe 10. It was like different colors. It was like
Yeah.
red, black, and white. And I was like, oh, it's like a kind of cool puzzle. Like I just want to buy that. So I bought it and I opened the little book up and it shows all the different ways that it can be solved. And so you
Mm.
just put it together and then it was like, oh, you can solve it by having all the red pieces connected, black and white. And then it's like, ooh, and then if you want to really get hard, like try to solve it where no two of the same color are touching, like no corner, right? So I'm like, maybe I'll just bring this to the ballpark and see if any of the boys want to do it, right? And so I go on this road trip to Lynchburg, Virginia, bring this puzzle with me, not thinking anything
Yeah.
of it. And I like tell the guys a little bit about it. And I'm going about my day and doing my thing. And all of a sudden, it's like five guys are just like hunched over the table, right? And they're like all trying to figure this out. And then they're like yelling and cheering, like, we did it, like, look at this, we did this one. And I was so surprised that these athletes, like at the pinnacle of their sport, were like really committed and interested to this like very cognitive, like at times very frustrating thing. And it, again, just the microcosm of their sport, right? The frustration and the failure that baseball brings. There's like the frustration and failure of putting all the pieces in and just being like, oh, this doesn't fit. And it's the same with chess. It's just like you're sitting and you're watching this move and you have this great idea. Oh, I'm going to do this play, and you go and do it. And then it's like they're kind of not falling into it. And then you make a little lapse of a move and then they make a move and you're in trouble. It's just like this frustration. But then it's like, how can you bounce back from that failure?
Yeah.
How can you bounce back from losing that piece? It's such unique vehicles of like what these guys deal with and experience every night. And so I think on the mental performance coach side, like
Hmm.
finding tricky, unique ways into it. And I mean that was one of my like the first puzzle. I ended up buying like probably like six or seven puzzles from that company. I brought we went through a huge Rubik's Cube phase at the Guardians. Just like guys learning how to do it on YouTube and then seeing who could do it faster. All these things where like I said, it lends itself to this sport where there's a lot of downtime, a lot
Yeah.
of rain delays, and so you just have people coming through, and it's pretty special. And I think as a mental performance coach, being unique and different in how you approach the work, it doesn't have to be this like sit down, have this conversation. It could just be let's sit down and play chess and see what conversation comes.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I think it just brings forward the various ways in which you can actually connect with the performers you're working with, right? It doesn't have to be like you said, sit down, I'm going to show you a presentation. This is the first slide, as compared to, well, this is a Rubik's Cube. How about you solve that? And we also have a conversation as we're doing that, but in the flow of it, not something that they have to do. So, as I was thinking while you were sharing that, okay, these are performers at the pinnacle of their sport, like you said, they're thinking and performing at the highest level. How do you think are their approaches different than, say, someone who has just started? And how does that change the way you work with them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I definitely I feel somewhat uniquely placed to answer this, just considering I have actually like worked in sort of every phase of professional baseball at least.
Hmm.
Um, and so I can tell you this that at least at the highest level, at the major league level, the thing that I've noticed the most is that the players do not leave very much up to chance.
Mm.
So that goes for how they train themselves physically, the way they train themselves fundamentally. They don't leave very much up to chance in terms of like how they fuel themselves and what they eat, how they, recover. And they really don't leave very much up to chance with how they think and how they train their mind either. And so
Hmm.
they're very deliberate with their time. They're very deliberate with the modalities that they use for preparing and for recovering. Um, and I think the thing that I try to help them with is have a system in
Mm.
place that allows them to not have to have like crazy self-control or discipline. It's a system that's set up for them that allows their mental performance work to be a fabric and a part of their day that lets them be prepared as they step, to batter's box or out onto the field or onto the rubber. And so um, that's the part that I've noticed at the highest level is that these guys are very deliberate about their system and they do not leave very much up to chance. I
Mm.
think what I've noticed is like for younger individuals and people that are maybe like just stepping into professional baseball or just stepping into like high levels in college or where it might be, is that they've always been the best.
Hmm.
in terms of the task.
Yeah.
And so they haven't had to handle with a lot of failure. They haven't maybe had the competition level be like at the same level all the time as they are. And so they might not have a system in place. And again, that's okay.
Yeah.
But I think a mental performance coach is uniquely placed to help them develop a system for themselves that allows them to be as consistent as possible to, you know, realistically not leave those little things up to chance. I think because especially in a sport like baseball, it's like you have very little control. And
Yeah.
so when you think about not leaving things up to chance, it's like if I can touch, manage, influence, or control it, that's what I'm going to give my energy and my effort to, my intent, my attention, and that's where I'm going to place all of those things.
Yeah. I think the intentionality and the deliberate effort that you mentioned is such an important distinguishing factor, right? Because they identify that what they can have, well, intentional effort over, they can do that and be deliberate about it. And that actually leaves less to chance, like you mentioned. And building upon that, the controllable aspects of it, like there's so many aspects that are also outside of their control. It got me thinking how even in chess, okay, sure, you can predict how or what your opponent might play, yet there's no surety that they are going to go through with that. So, especially when it comes to that parallel, how do you work with, players on your team? Or if you can suggest or recommend some examples in which people or performers can think when such a situation comes across, where they're really struggling to move away from those uncontrollables that are actually really bothering them.
Yeah, I mean, it happens to me in chess all the time as the amateur in the room here. It's like I have this like great idea. I just saw this like cool thing on YouTube and I'm gonna try it. And I'm like, sometimes I'll tell our players, I'm like, dude, you're not falling into my trap. What are you doing? Like, come on,
Yeah.
do the moves that it says on there. So um I mean, I think it's really helpful in my opinion to one, like identify those things. And so part of it comes into like a little bit of self-awareness, right? And
Hmm.
there's there's a part of like realizing you don't have control that for some people is scary and for some people is freeing. And
Mm.
so, in my opinion, like when you kind of realize about your actual life in general, you kind of start to see, ooh,
Yeah.
I don't have very much control. And like I said, for some people, that's really scary. And then for others, it's very freeing because you actually know where to put your energy and your attention. And so I sometimes will like shift the question a little bit more of, hey, you have a finite amount of a resource, right? Like your energy and your attention, you have a finite amount of each day. And so part of it is like, hey, if you want to be a high performer, we need to be selfish with that resource, selfish with the commodity. And
Hmm.
so if we're going to be selfish with it, we have to give it to the right thing. By giving it to the right thing, it's what you can actually touch, manage, influence, and control. So let's think about those things. Okay. And then we talk about that. And it's like, okay, now where do you think you're putting your resource right now? You have them listed off or talk about it. And again, like they're trying to figure out what that looks like. And I think sometimes that compare and contrast can be really helpful for them.
Hmm.
I think it's important to say that this it's not this idea of like having 100% control, 100% influence, 100%. Somebody it was actually one of our mental performance coaches, Juan Pa Favero. In his interview, he did a presentation, and it was actually about control and influence. And then he said something that I had never heard somebody say, which was really cool. Was um, he was like, even if you have like 1% influence on something, you should give your effort and your
Mm.
attention to the 1% part of it. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's just we sometimes get very caught in the black and white. Like I have control, I don't. And that's why it's like control the controllables and those phrases can be a little frustrating because it's like it's not that black and white, right? It's
Yeah.
it's not that finite. And so for me, it's if you have 2% influence, give that 2% influence your energy and your attention.
Hmm.
And I think that's an important part of helping performers expand what that actually looks like for themselves and get like I said, giving your most precious resource and commodity, your attention and your energy to the right things.
Yeah. Attention and energy really are big currencies when you're performing at that level. That also makes me think about how y'all approach aspects such as confidence, motivation, or, even performance anxiety or pressure. How does that look like at, high performer level? Because when I think about chess at the master level, be it international masters, grandmasters, or anyone who's really performing at that level. I think confidence, motivation, and these aspects look very differently as compared to what they would at, say, the amateur level, or, less like ratings that are lower at a certain point. How do you think that translates differently?
I have a unique relationship with confidence. I'm not a huge fan. Now, this very well might be semantics, so I'll
Sure.
just say that out loud. But I, and again, like the research on self efficacy is like very strong, obviously. And so, like I said, it might be semantics, but we a lot of times talk about competence in baseball. And so the reason I like competence is it aligns quite well with self efficacy of just like the capacity, the belief we have in our capacity to execute a certain task. And when we think about competence, it's really around built on foundations of strength of things like reps and time and effort and things that you can truly count, and
Mm,
hold and come back to and see. And so we will oftentimes emphasize the competence foundation that somebody has. And the reason I like that is because if you ask somebody about confidence, right? If you say, like, if you're going to say, like, hey, let's figure out how confident this person is for what they're about to do, right? You might ask them the question, like, hey, like, if you're thinking about your confidence, what does that look like for you? How does it feel coming to this?
yeah.
They will say, and I quote, I feel, and then whatever that is, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, the feeling is based around whatever the task might be, or the environment might be, or how they're feeling that day.
Yeah.
And, like, I'm going to be honest with you, for a lack of better terms, and I'm not going to swear, but it's like nobody gives a crap how you feel. Like, they don't care how you feel. You still have to execute the task. And I also know that, like, like the feelings are fleeting, right? Like the emotions are fleeting. And there's been plenty of performers who have felt amazing and then don't perform well. And there's plenty of performers that have felt like crap and then
Yeah.
perform well. And so it's like it's just it's not one to one. And don't get me wrong, I hope for everyone that you feel great, you feel
Yeah.
excited, you feel amazing, and you're competent and you go and crush it. But like that's just not how it works. And so we give so much power to these emotions and to these feelings that when it comes to talking to high performers, it's like these things will come and go.
Hmm.
But like what's your true foundation? Like what's something that when when you're unsure about what you're about to execute, that you can go back into your reservoir, back
Mm,
into the reps, and really think about, like, hey, this is what this is built on. This is built on something very strong. Actually, let me count and tell you exactly how many reps this is built on. Let me give you the exact time that this is built on,
yeah.
you know? And for me, that's strength. And so, like I said, it might be semantics. And, again, I feel very strongly about the research on self-efficacy. And so again, it's hard for me because every time you ask somebody about confidence, they come at you with a feeling, and it's just they come and go, and you have to play anyway. So play with things that you can, really come back to in terms of foundation.
Yeah, I think that was lovely because, that's one of the first things I hear, that I feel confident because XYZ. And oftentimes with feelings, they are like states, they are so fleeting
Yeah.
that I ask them a simple question. Hey, every time you win a chess game, do you feel the exact amount of happiness, or is it differing every time you come out of it? And that highlights to them the same feeling can actually mean differently, giving the
Yeah.
situation. um, is also different. So then I love the competence version of it, where you're looking at more so how it is derived from the effort or the reps that you have put in. And that is very tangible. That's very concrete because you can see exactly what you've done up to that point that has led you there. I think if chess players also adopt such a mindset or an approach, it would be very beneficial for them to think about, okay, like today I might not feel how I was feeling yesterday when I thought I was confident, but how about how competent I'm feeling as I'm going into the game today? Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's lovely. And, one question that I had was, those who know or are experienced with the game still might come across mental performance challenges. How do these challenges look like at high performer levels?
That's a great question. Um, I do think that we try to help athletes a little bit with identity, right? And I,
Mm-hmm.
I imagine that is a big thing in chess too. It's
Yeah.
a like, the old phrase is baseball is what you do, it's not who you are. I'm sure
Yeah.
it's probably just as hard in chess considering how young these athletes probably start for you all.
Yeah.
So part of it is around identity and like how try to help athletes be good separators and help them
Mm-hmm.
support themselves um, for not letting results dictate their self-worth and what that might look like. So I think that's a big portion of it. Um, and then for again, like I think the big thing that we're always trying to do is just provide simple systems for athletes to integrate mental performance into the daily fabric of their life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you and I might have talked about it, and um, I feel this could definitely translate to chess in terms of whether it's chess teams or just individuals. But like we try to the decision fatigue is like pretty heavy in baseball. I'm sure it's in chess too, but
Yeah.
we try to make it easy for the athletes, and so it's like when you think about their schedule that they have every day, play 162 games in 180
Mm-hmm.
days. It's like every day on the schedule, there's just 10 minutes of breath work and mindfulness, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so it's like for them, they know this thing is there for them, and we incorporate a little imagery inside of it. And for them, it's like that's my time, that's my daily work. That's what I put in, just like whether in the gym, in the training room, and in the cages, or on the bullpen. They
Yeah.
identify this time and space to be able to do this 10 minutes of breath work, or this 10 minutes of mindfulness, or 10 minutes of imagery. And so I think especially for how it's integrated into performance and high performance spaces, part of it is like make it part of the day, make it part of the.
Mm-hmm.
It's not this separate thing. It's not this like thing that's done in the back. It's on the schedule and everyone
Yeah.
sees it and it's part of the day and that's what it looks like. And so I think that integration part has helped a ton, helped us sort of like get ahead of the curve on some
Yeah.
things before they actually happen because it's integrated into what they do every day and becomes a part of what they do.
Yeah. I love how you're saying that you're not waiting for something to happen and then you work almost as, okay, now that this has happened, this is how we fix it. It's preventative more so in nature, that so that that doesn't happen, let's start working from now, such that it is built into our routines and it is part of, just the way we are, instead of, like you said, sitting down. Now I'm going to do sports psychology. It doesn't
Yep.
really work like that. So, those viewers who are watching who may be at the starting levels of their journey or are even high performers in chess, what would be your recommendation to include mental performance training? Why do you think, no matter the level, why does it become important for athletes to have this part?
It's important because no matter what your performance is, whether it's chess, whether it's baseball, whether it's taking the SATs or the ACTs, whether it's asking somebody out on a first date, whatever your performance is, your brain will drive your body.
Mm-hmm.
Your brain, when it knows that you're going to do something that's important, sets off a chain reaction of systems and processes in your body.
Yeah.
So, mental performance coaching and what we do is helping to provide insights to high performers about what is happening. Like we are the Sherpa that is helping them interpret what is going on, right? I mean, we're
Mm.
so much more in touch with our physiology and our emotions and our feelings than we are with our thoughts. And so we provide this really unique lens of understanding the systems
Mm-hmm.
and processes that occur in our mind and our bodies and how they intersect and how they play together. And really, like our job is helping high performers interpret those things. We're not trying to change anything. We're not changing biology. Like
Yeah.
those things are happening for a reason. They're actually happening to help,
Yeah.
provide more resources for our bodies to do the things we want to do and to for our mind as well. But if they're misinterpreted, that's when we start to see some struggles in high performance. And so my advice for any high performer is, whether it's you're working with a mental performance coach or you're not, or you want to learn more about it, like that's the crux of what we do.
Yeah.
We guide you on this journey of understanding what is going to happen to you when you go and you step in that massive hall of people and you're the last game of chess being played. and
Yeah.
you set off this chain reaction of physiological symptoms. You have no clue what's going on because you've never felt this way. But yeah, if you had sat down with a mental performance coach, maybe you understand and you're anticipating those things. You're
Hmm.
welcoming them. You're understanding that your brain and your body are mobilizing resources for you to kick butt in what you're about to do. And so it's scary when the interpretation can be a little bit off because it can catch a lot of people off guard and you're not sure how to respond. Versus individuals who have learned about that and understand it and know how to use it and know how to regulate it because they've been taught those skills. And I just think that's a really special place to play around in.
Yeah. No, thank you for that. And the way I see it, and please feel free to correct me if it's wrong, but it's almost as if people expect that now that I'm working with a sports psychology consultant, mental performance, now my problems are just going to go away with, the snap of a finger, as
Yep,
opposed to looking at it as a process, not just for, learning more about your performance, but lastly to learn about your own body, your physiology, and how your thoughts and also feelings, because well, chess is a cognitive sport, so thoughts are an important part of what we do. How does that work? How in tune are you with what's happening within you that you can also have or reach that place where you can intercept and change or reinterpret at the right amount of times? I think when they look at it from that lens, the whole aspect of, sports psychology is not supposed to fix my problems, but make me look at them differently.
100%. I promise you, we're not going to say anything profound that's going to fix everything. I promise you. And if
Yeah.
somebody's promising you that, then you might want to check them out. But it's no, I mean, again, you go to the gym and you lift weights, and it's like you don't see the immediate results. It takes time and it takes consistency and it takes effort and it takes discipline. It's no different on the mental side. There's no magic fix. It doesn't happen like that. It takes
Mm.
time, it takes effort, it takes tension, it takes discipline. And the ones that invest in that and find consistency, man, just the benefits are profound. It's really special.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Brian, for enlightening not just the audience, but also me on so many things that you shared today and how, high performers work, how the climate is like when working with them, and how, well, outside of sport, different puzzles, for instance, can be that striking chord where you have those effective conversations. Thank you so much for your time. I think people are going to really benefit from watching this.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Of course. Okay. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next Tuesday once again. Till then, take care. Bye.